Since 1969, BUILD has worked in some of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods to stem the tide of violence that takes away the positive potential and far too often the very lives of youth.
Hi everyone, my name is Nancy Michaels and I'm with the Mansfield Institute for Social Justice and Transformation here at Roosevelt University, and I am really excited that you're all here this evening, and thrilled to be doing this in conjunction with Professor Steve Balkin through the Department of Economics here at Roosevelt University. So welcome to this interactive discussion on gangs in Chicago, the culture, the violence, and the impact. And we're thrilled to have BUILD here, who we'll talk about in a moment. But first I want to introduce Professor Steve Balkin, who will be moderating this event and who was instrumental in bringing this discussion of gangs in Chicago together. Professor Balkin is professor of economics at Roosevelt University. Among many areas, he teaches microeconomics and the economics of crime. And his research includes criminal victim interaction, poverty alleviation, urban development, and the informal economic sector and urban development, which I already said. So, Professor Balkin.
There was Nancy Michaels from the Mansfield Institute of Social Justice, and she's my co-worker on this project. I'd like to welcome those of you on watching on CAN TV, and also welcome the people who are in attendance, of which there are most of my students, I think all my students from my economics of crime class are here. And I also asked a student of mine from one of my microeconomics courses to come to, Joel Rivera, who is a criminal defense paralegal and works a lot with gangs and grew up in Humboldt Park. He's had a lot of interest in gangs and knows a lot of friends and family who have been in gangs. We all have a concern about gangs here because we hear about the violence, and we try to think of solutions, and it's very hard. So I thought we should bring some of the experts in from the city who know a lot more than we do, and maybe with some cross intellectual interaction, we might be able to come up with some new ideas maybe. BUILD is the name of the organization which we invited here. And since 1969, BUILD, B-U-I-L-D, is that an acronym? And what does that stand for?
Broader Urban Involvement and Leadership Development.
Broader Urban Involvement and Leadership Development is what BUILD stands for. And since 1969, BUILD has worked in some of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods to stem the tide of violence that takes away the positive potential and far too often the very lives of youth. BUILD's mission remains to engage at-risk youth in the schools and on the streets so they can realize their educational and career potential and contribute to the stability, safety, and well-being of our communities. In order to do this work effectively, the folks at BUILD must have an intimate background of the interworkings of gangs in Chicago, which is why we've asked them to speak here on the topic today. BUILD develops innovative programs to address the ever-changing challenges that affect at-risk youth while remaining true to the organizational mission. They've gone from servicing fewer than 200 gang-affiliated teens in one neighborhood in 1969 to over 3,500 youth in 8 communities now, with an array of street work, school-based leadership development, and college and career prep programs. I want to mention some of the people here from BUILD. Matilda Minerva de Dios is the Futures Program Director of BUILD, and she's going to run the session here today with other people. And we have Jason Maldonado, who is an intervention specialist. Meredith Rodriguez, who is a head education outreach specialist. And Carmen Rojas, who is an intern. So I'd like to now turn the session over to Matilda Minerva de Dios, and I'll be interrupting from time to time, and then my students hopefully will, and other people will get to ask questions.
Thank you, Professor. I'm going to take this mic and have a seat with, as we continue our dialogue. I'd like to invite everybody to join the circle, if that's okay, if you're comfortable, and move at least as close as we can to create a circle. This is a style of, indigenous leadership that we have also used throughout the years with our youth work. So I'd like to invite all of us to be in part of this dialogue circle. Somebody can sit here too, because we won't be using the podium today. And thank you all so much for your flexibility and interest. This is part of it. This is part of the work, right? It's very loud. So you should not be looking at the back of anybody's head. We can try to do that as best as possible. Jason, you want to come sit here? Want to sit over here? I'll scoot over a little bit. Let me scoot over. Scoot down a little bit. Are we good? We love Carmen. His family. Are we okay? As best as we can? Great. Thank you. It's funny because this is something typically as part of a workshop process that we do with young people, is often to try to figure out how to create a space for everybody to be able to participate. And so thank you for participating in that as we rearrange the room and accommodate everybody who's coming in so that we can all have this conversation together. I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce the leaders at BUILD who have been doing this work for quite some time. And in fact, actually, also want to invite every one of us to be able to participate in this discussion so that we can not only inform each other, but to create a community dialogue about these issues that we're talking about today. My name is Matilda de Dios. I've been with BUILD starting on my 4th year. I came to BUILD as a community organizer, youth organizer, and activist, working on issues of juvenile justice in New York City, and also as a union organizer working with nursing home workers to find and demand equitable pay in a contract with nursing home workers. And so I come to BUILD with an intent, dedication, and purpose for building social justice and building a strong youth movement of young people who are ready to lead in their communities, including the various backgrounds that young people have faced. And I guess I'll introduce Jason. This is Jason Maldonado, and he's an intervention specialist with BUILD, and I'll let you introduce yourself moving forward.
Hello. My name is Jason Maldonado. I've been working for BUILD going on 2 years. I came to them from several different agencies. I used to work for Bobby Wright Mental Health. I did case management in the field with their ACT program, a serve community treatment. I worked with severely mentally ill patients. That's what we called them at the time. At community organizing and violence prevention in Little Village. I was their violence prevention collaborative coordinator. I did work for Ceasefire in Bryant Park. I was an outreach supervisor in Bryant Park. I worked for Job Corps, working with young people that sought alternative forms of education. Now I work with Build. I do gang intervention work. I used to be working in Roberto Clemente High School, but I also do case management work with juveniles that are released out of the detention center. I do case management with them from 100th Street to Roosevelt Avenue. It's a pretty big area. I work in Inglewood, back of the yards, Pilsen, Little Village, Marquette Park, Gage Park, anywhere between in there. So I get kids. I probably got a caseload combined with different kids, probably about maybe 160 kids altogether. Some of them I see regular, some of them I don't. I kind of look at it as a lot of the work is up to them.
I'm not very good with this. Hi, my name is Meredith Rodriguez. I am the lead education specialist for Building Futures. Prior to that, in the year 2001, I was hired by Bill, excuse me, as the gang intervention specialist, and I worked primarily with the young ladies inside the schools and outside of the community. Prior to that, I'm originally from New York, if you can hear my accent. I worked with task treatment alternative to street crime for a few years, and now I'm the education outreach specialist.
So that's just a little bit about our backgrounds. It's really important to also understand that as we do our work is contextualized, and not only in terms of the work that the expertise that we come to the field with, and all of you come to the field with, but also where we come from and how that we tell our story. Good, thanks. And it's important for you to also understand that when we come with our stories, all of us come from a certain level of background. So I would like to be able to invite people to speak about why we're here today. And we have a sizable group, so I don't know how much time it would take for each of us to talk about why we're here. But perhaps if some people have some burning questions and why they specifically came here that wasn't either reflected in the agenda that you may have or may not have, we'd be happy to start talking about our expectations for this circle so that we can continue to create that dialogue. Yeah. So some of the things that we wanted to talk about are why people, the connection between gangs and violence, right, and the history of gangs in Chicago. Does anybody want to posit some questions or some issues for potential discussion as we're here? Or why are some of you here today? Are there things that you want to hear about? Yes, thank you. And please, I'm sorry, we're passing this around because it's a talking stick as well as also an audio booster for the recording. And just please state your name or your introduction. And
well, my name is Joe Rivera, and I was first asked here by my professor Balkin here. He's my professor in my economics class. So at the beginning of the semester, when we were just doing like basic introductions, I mentioned to him that I was a criminal defense paralegal. So he brought up the idea of probably having me here kind of express my ideas on what I think as far as gang and violence. I basically told him I came from a two-tier spectrum. I kind of grew up in Homo Park. I graduated from Roberto Clemente High School in '96. Back in the 90s, Roberto Clemente had a horrible image. It was like every other week there was something going on at Roberto Clemente as far as gangs and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up around just basically that atmosphere. It's like, it's impossible to get away from it, especially when you live in an area where basically gangs they kind of control what goes on in the neighborhood. You know, a lot of the times the police department don't have the manpower, or they just don't have the solutions to counteract with the gang activity in the neighborhood. And as for my experience, it all depends on the gang. You know, there's some gangs that are more clever than others. There are some gangs that are more violent than others. But if you talk to one of them, or if you kind of like just get to know them, it's like they're like sending one of us. It's not like they act like they're some kind of, you know, see a person, but a lot of them have families, they come from middle-class families. It's not always a low-class family. Me personally, I had a lot of family members and friends that were involved in gangs, and we kind of teared away from the usual of, well, family neglect and stuff like that. I have a very strong family tie, so I don't think that was one of the issues of my family members got involved in it. I think it was more of getting basically, some people kind of strive to be with groups. It's hard to be like just an individual nowadays. It's like everybody always wants to belong to a particular kind of group. And if you look at the history of Chicago with segregation and just basically how neighborhoods change, and through the civil rights movements, a lot of the gangs started around the civil rights movements, and a lot of them had more political aspects to them. But like any organization over the years, they tend to change. If you look at gangs from 1960 to what they are right now in 2009, it's a 360 circle. A lot of gangs right now are, they're leaderless. A lot of their leadership is incarcerated, and law enforcement thinks that that's the way to get rid of the gangs. But as I've noticed, I think gangs got more violent because they don't have that leadership that they had before, and you have just a lot of senseless individuals who have basically no goal, just no motto, and they're just out there to just, cause havoc to the community. They don't have that sense of, I live in this community, how could I participate to this community? Another thing that we were talking about was how does economics also affect gang life and vice versa? A lot of problems that were posed is, how could we as a country and as citizens of this country kind of, provide to a better way of life, And a lot of the times, when you live in a low income community and you see a lot of these gang members, they're making money, and you kind of look at that like, wow, I want to get to that point. And a lot of individuals, they don't look as education as the key nowadays. That was one thing that I always had in the back of my pocket. I always knew that education was important. It's just, you just got to know what you got to do with your education. So, looking at that lifestyle, you kind of tend to relate of how people might get enticed to getting involved in that type of atmosphere. A lot of individuals that I talk to as far as gang members, they always ask, well, there's not enough jobs, and vice versa. So that seems to be a big problem nowadays, but in today's economies, there's a lot of people that are unemployed, and you don't see them individuals getting involved in the gang life. So sometimes we can't use that excuse of there's not enough jobs. There's other ways that you could structure your energy when it comes to that versus just joining a gang. Another issue that tends to be is you have a lot of reoccurring crimes. What happens to individuals once they come out of jail? That seems to be a big problem too, and a big problem that I've seen, especially in my line of work as a criminal defense. A lot of these people are convicted felons, but it's like once you fall into the system once, we live in a country that preaches, democracy and second chances, but it's hard to get that second chance nowadays, because if you try to go look for a job, and the employer sees that you have a criminal record, that's already an X on your back. So a lot of them people got families, and they need to feed their families. That's just basically the state of nature. So a lot of them kind of get back into that circle of going back on the streets, doing what they did before, and a lot of them get incarcerated again. Now you have a whole generation of kids growing up without their father, because a lot of them are incarcerated, and it's hard sometimes for a single mother who maybe have to take on that burden of maybe working 2 or 3 jobs just to support their kids. But then that leaves kind of like that family neglect, because now who's basically there to take care of the kid like once he comes out of school? I encourage more programs like BUILD, and there's other programs around the community as well that I've looked at, but there's a lot of kids that don't take advantage of that. So they get left basically to the streets, basically kind of dictating what they're going to do with their life. So we got to figure out how could we change the solution, and that's kind of why I came into this forum, because I believe there's no one solution. It's like gangs, violence, and economics. It's like, they're all kind of connected, and there's like no right solution. So what I've kind of basically stressed more is we got to kind of get more of like our elected officials more involved and kind of have them figure out more ways on how we can improve people's lives economically, socially, and stuff like that. So pass back the mic.
Does anybody else want to chime in? I think you spoke to a lot of really important and salient points and brought kind of like a continuum of understanding. So maybe we can take a couple of steps back and look at a historical perspective of gangs and how gangs started. Jason, do you want to speak on that?
All right. Okay.
It's a dialogue.
Speaking about gangs historically, there's a lot to talk about what he had mentioned earlier during the process. From my understanding, I grew up in Little Village. I don't want to have it all up like that. I grew up in Little Village on 26th Street. I used to be a gang member. I really don't like the negative connotation of using the term gang, but that's the words we use. Growing up in the community at that time, which I'll tell you is I'm 42 years old, so it was like in the 70s and 80s. That time there was a lot of racism going on, and we basically got together to protect ourselves against other people that were from different nationalities that in the community we lived in. But over time, you guys keep telling me to push this over time, it kind of got to a point where it stopped becoming about racism. It started turning into more or less one group fighting another group over vendettas and turf wars and so on. There was always drugs in the community. There was people that sold drugs, but that wasn't really the focus of it. It wasn't really the focus of the things that were going on in the neighborhood. It was this guy did this to me, or them guys did that to me, or what have you, and that's was really the focus. But as time went on, the gangs became more organized. Literature was written, laws were written that they formed and structured amongst themselves. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to read any of their literature. Some of it is kind of progressive as far as their ways of thinking and encouraging education and community involvement and so on. But a lot of people might feel that some of those things were a farce, a facade that they put up for their own activities. Well, that's just a matter of perspective of what you really believe and what they were doing, or who wrote it and what their intentions were behind it. I kind of believe that that there was good intentions behind some of the things that they put out there, but you can't have what's the legal term? You can't grow fruit from the fruit of the bad tree. Yeah, you can't have something's good is not going to come out of something like that because it's built in a state of ignorance. You mentioned some of the things in regards to a lot of them talk about jobs, wanting jobs and opportunity and misdirected energy. I work with young men in the streets, and most of them are gang members. A lot of them talk about, they want jobs, but a lot of them just want people to listen to them, to understand where they're coming from and what's going on. And a lot of the factors of that that their organizations are leaderless. Yeah, and there are individuals that are natural leaders that you'll see them coming out from the rest of them that's going to step forward through charisma, their intelligence, or maybe just their aggressiveness. They become leaders in a group. Those are the guys that I feel I need to focus on to stir them in a positive direction, because they can influence the other ones to go into that direction. I'm a Roosevelt alumni. I was incarcerated for 13 years. I went to Roosevelt University while I was in prison. I came home, I got my bachelor's degree, came back to Roosevelt, got my master's degree here. And yeah, it is hard. I ain't even broke past 32 in my salary with a master's degree. But that's how it is. You have a neon X glowing on your back. They tend to look at that and they discriminate against you for having that conviction. My conviction happened in 1984, and I'm still suffering behind it. But hey, that's what happens, right? So there's a lot of things. Roosevelt University had a very powerful influence in my life and encouraging me to go to school. their faculty were real, like Michael Elliott. I mentioned Heather Dalmage. Heather Dalmage is part of the Institute of Mansfield Institute. Yeah, she was my advisor. They always encouraged education, and that's really a strong fact. They encouraged us while we were incarcerated to look into going to certain fields to come back to these communities that we came from, to contribute back to the community. That was part of their goal and plan of what they did, and it works. I felt it worked. A lot of my fellow guys I was incarcerated are all they're all ex-gang members. Majority of them are in the field of social services, working in the community, trying to give back. A lot of it's part of redemption for them to go back and give to the community and try to make a change and a difference. A lot of those same guys are the same guys that helped create the problems of the gangs that are out there now. They were the gang leaders, so now they see a different change. That doesn't mean all of them see it that way, but some of them do. There's a lot of differences in the gangs in the city of Chicago from side to side. A lot of north side, west side is more economic violence, is economic based, like who controls this corner or that corner to make their money. On the south side, it's not as economic based. It's more long-standing blood vendettas and feuds that have gone on for 30, 40 years. The same thing, anniversaries come up. This guy got killed on this day, or this happens every summer the parade happens, or every time this event happens, it's a continuous, like almost a tradition for them to go out and battle or shoot at each other or do what have you on these specific dates and times. During the time when I used to work for Ceasefire, I did street intervention work, and that was something that Street Fire, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Street Fire, Ceasefire, yeah, them guys. I don't know if you are familiar with Ceasefire, but those, they weren't as in tune to these theories of how it's different, from one side of the city to another, and how Latino street organizations and African American street organizations differ. Hugh had mentioned how things have changed in the community. A lot of the changes that we have seen over the last probably 6 to 7 years have been because they knocked down all the projects. And the projects were knocked down purely for economic development. And the gentrification that we see going on in Chicago's metropolitan area. That systematic process of Old Man Daley's 21 plan was to eliminate all these communities, to bring back the yuppies and bring back other people into the center of the city and kind of push the rest of them, which I don't like saying blacks or Latinos as minorities, because we're not minorities. People of color are the majority on this planet. But anyways, they pretty much caused this. You don't think somebody someplace said, do you think, Mayor Daley, this is a good idea that we should be knocking down all these projects and putting all these people in these different neighborhoods? Nobody really stopped to say anything like that, did they? Or maybe they did and they didn't care. All right? Because I think if people really cared, we wouldn't have the situation we have nowadays. I go into the juvenile detention center and I speak to young men there, and I really feel it's a mission to keep them out of the hands of them people, which are police officers, Department of Corrections. They fall in the trap. They keep falling for the same old things. It's hard to resist the temptation of seeing people making money in your neighborhood, and you don't have money, you're disenfranchised, and you really don't know where to put your focus at. So you resort to becoming a part of a gang, or this is what you see, this is how it is to make money, or this is what I can do. Because a lot of them are in for it to make money. But you do have guys that just do like that type of lifestyle. And when I talk with them, I try to give them more of a reality. This is the lifestyle you're choosing. These are the consequences of your lifestyle. You can end up dead. You can end up in prison. You can end up in a wheelchair. You're going to see your friends get shot. The police are going to come after you. This is what's going to happen to you. And now that you understand all this, you can't cry about it later, because now you have an understanding of the lifestyle you're choosing to lead. Some of them get the hint. Some of them try to change. I have several young men I've been working with for about 2 years now. I've just recently got them to a point to where they're going to school now. You know, it's a matter of how you judge change. We work in the non-for-profit agencies. We work based on funding, based on when the money comes in. A lot of our programs are funding based, and when the funding starts acting funny, our services get reduced. It seems kind of coincidental that every year when in Springfield they're battling for the dollars comes, the fiscal year operates from it's July to June, right? July to June. And when do the schools close in our city? June, beginning of summer. And what happened? What are they doing in Springfield? They're fighting over the money in Springfield. How much money got to go here? And what happens to the programs in the neighborhood? While they're sitting in Springfield fighting, our kids in our communities don't have jobs, don't got places to go. There ain't people out there helping them or directing them into different positive directions. So they're in the street. You know, other things have happened in our city. So we're here talking about gangs, but the gangs, as we see them, as they've evolved now and changed now, as a direct result of all the economic, social, and political processes that are going on here in the state of Illinois and our country, but here in the city of Chicago specifically. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to take urban studies here at Roosevelt University. They talk about a lot of the different changes that have happened over the time in Chicago. You can go back and research it yourself and see how the city has been almost intentionally segregated by the way it's designed, geographically designed. Our communities were isolated. So you could be a Mexican and never have to leave your community and don't even have to learn English. All right, or you could be Oriental or whatever. You never have to leave out of your own ethnic enclave. Here, you want to take it from me? All right, you gave it to me. You told me to roll. All right.
I was saying Asian, not Oriental.
Oh, I'm my fault. All right. She was politically correcting me. But when the communities are so isolated like that, people start having differences and looking at each other differently. And that's some of the things that originally started the gangs in the city of Chicago. We had the Italians and the Jews and the different type of groups that came together. And as time went on, they moved into what we have now. They're in politics, they're police officers, they're professionals, and all the same means and methods in which they've achieved the American dream through crime and corruption. That's what makes America great, right? They've cut all those things off. And when the professor here talks about the economics of crime, they've limited the avenues for what is now street gangs to rise up the ladder and change like how these other groups have changed. So now they're stuck at that level of what? Selling drugs, petty street crimes. They don't have the process in which other groups in the country have moved up to. It's like even like a glass ceiling on crime. There's racism in crime, right? It's like that all over here. You can have this.
No, you were.
I was doing good?
Yeah, I'm not trying to take it. Man.
All right. The what? The hourly wage or a hustle?
Somebody who's hustling.
But they probably get $2 off a bag. If a guy's selling a $5 bag for a dude, he's getting $2. Because the other guy got to get his $2, and then they got to go to the guy the other rest of them got to go to the guy that's supplying them. Yeah. A lot of my guys, they got to live. You know, I don't encourage them to sell drugs. They're going to live. They have to live. I often tell them, look, you can't hustle your whole life. There ain't no old drug dealers. There's no retirement plan. There's no 401k. You can't gang bang. Does your organization have a 401k? Maybe I should have switched over, right? Or get a health benefits or health plan out of them. There's no such thing. So you can't hustle your whole life. You need to get some form of education. Maybe not all of you are cut out for college. Those that are, I try to encourage them and influence them, but ultimately it's their choice. But I tell them you basically really need to find something, a trade, something that you can rely on and fall back on, because selling drugs is not going to cut it for you for the rest of your life. You keep getting caught at it, maybe you're not that good of a drug dealer. Maybe you should give it up. You know, you keep getting caught, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you keep getting caught getting busted for the same crime. Maybe you got to quit it, change your MO, dude, because you keep on getting caught for the same thing, When I was a juvenile, I kept getting caught for doing bad stuff to people. You can't expect to shoot people and stab people and expect them not to tell on you. So that's what happens, right? But I try to encourage them to look at something different other than just staying in that same mind frame, shift their paradigm to whereas they're seeing things from a different perspective. Because they can't even think beyond them leaving the next block. They can't even think beyond them hitting 21. There's a very nihilistic, is that proper? Nihilistic attitude amongst them, whereas fatalistic, nihilistic, where they think the world is this is all that it is. There's nothing more. I really firmly believe that some more opportunities need to be brought to the streets, specifically to urban communities that have that are disenfranchised, that need some type of a light for them to reach out to guide them from this cycle of negativity. Professor, you want to take this?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, as citizens, what can I speak loud?
Okay.
What can we do, as a citizen, just to help improve it? Or I'm finished. Just had a question.
She said, what can we do as citizens to help improve things?
Did you want to answer that?
Hi. Let me first start off by saying it's really important how we got here. Gangs, what are gangs? As I was telling my cop, we were talking in the restaurant. It's who's defining gangs? If you ask a dictionary, it's going to have a different definition than the police department. And they're going to have a different definition than an organization such as BUILD. And primarily gangs were brought about to combat the social ills, poverty, racism, all this oppression, isms. And here we are back again, like we were 1800, 1700, 1600, because we go that far back. However, their need to excel, their need to find empowerment has changed over the course of time. But the value still remains the same. They need to feel part of something. People need to feel, it's Maslow's law. We need to belong somewhere, someplace. We need to feel safe. For some people, it's an education, it's a college. For others, it's family. For others, it's the justice system. I know many young ladies that go in the justice system just to have housing, food, and a bed to sleep in. It's how we define it. Now, she spoke about what can we do about it as citizens. For me, what has worked always, working with people who are trying to voice, because that's what it is, they're trying to voice. They're trying to voice to people that, hey, look, I'm feeling oppressed, I'm feeling degraded, I'm feeling neglected. Hook me up, basically. And if you're not listening to them, if society's not listening to them, if the justice system is not listening to them, and the educational system is not listening to them, who do you think is going to listen to them? There's a reason why young adults are targeted. Up until the age of 21, a young mind isn't fully developed. It is not. So it can be manipulated and swayed. And I believe that is one of the reasons why our program works. You talked about what can we do? We can find alternatives. They want a place to belong. If you take away their place to belong, if you take away their sports, you take away their dancing, use the assets that they have, and stop looking at the liabilities, and the things that they don't have or things that they could create. Look at the assets that are already there. And that's what makes our program so successful, because we take a little human being, and we open their minds. You know, we show them things other than just their community. You know, we would prefer to take them out of those four walls that they have, like Jason was talking about. You know, segregation, it has been manipulated to do just that, to keep you isolated. And that's how they feel. They feel isolated. They want to be part of something. You know, we have taken youth to college tours to New York, to Atlanta, places where they're like, wow. We have youth that come downtown, have never been downtown, have never even saw what a Starbucks was, because they've never been out of their community. I think one of the most disappointing things for me when I came here, I was looking for an address and no one knew where it was at, because they stood in their community. People did not know how to tell me to get to the South Side. And I think when you're dealing with a young mind, I know, I still have a hard time with that. When you're dealing with a young mind, they want to explore. They have all this stuff going on in their head. They're like, wow, they want to be creative. I mean, I have a 13-year-old daughter that she's teaching me how to access the computer and my MySpace and all this other stuff. You know, and this is how their minds are. If you keep them caged up, it's just like any other entity on earth. If you back them in a corner, they have to come out fighting, especially if they want to get loose. They have to come out fighting. And what they're saying, what these young minds are saying to us is, hey, give us something else. We have a curriculum in the educational system that has been there for almost over 100 years. Time has changed. The trends have changed. Technology has been introduced. Why aren't we listening? They have all these creative things to do and all these creative things to say. Why don't we listen to them? You know, if we just sat down and listened, because Matilda was talking about how we form a circle. We do this because we want them to feel equal. Adultism is the primary area that adults struggle in when it comes to dealing with youth. We believe we have all the answers for them, but we don't allow them to voice what they think will work for them. And one of the things that we do at Build is we allow them to share that. We allow them to take it. That's why it's called leadership development, because we want them to be leaders. And sometimes leaders will participate in gang activity, negative activity. Yes, because no one else is hearing them. So what do? Listen. Give them an opportunity. You know, share your experience with them. Let them share experience with you. There's a lot of things these young minds have to offer. A lot. And it's really interesting when we just had a haunted house on Friday. We had a blast. You had to see the stuff that these kids came up with. It was so funny. I didn't believe we would be able to scare so many people. It was so funny. And we were in a small little room about this size. And people were coming out crying. But they were enjoying themselves. They were like, wow, this is cool. This is cool. So, I mean, again, if we want them to be the best that they can be, productive members of society, because we're trying to tame the violence, aren't we? And like I said, the only way for us to be able to do that is to allow them to lead in a positive way. You know, again, if we back someone up in a corner, any animal is going to come out fighting. It's the instinct. It's an instinct. No one wants to be oppressed. And these youth feel oppressed.
In a neighborhood, you may have 1,000 youth. Out of those 1,000 youth, I try to just to break it down in percentages so the numbers we can easily understand. You may have 100 that may join a gang. Out of that 100, you might have 10 guys or girls that are lifetime members. They'll always be part of that gang for the rest of their life. Out of those 10, you might have 3 to 5 that are the hardcore leaders, the guys that are actually like shooting people and killing people, the organizers, and they're money makers. So in essence, 3 to 5% of a gang, of any particular gang, is what's holding the community hostage. So it's not all of them. I've been to community forums and gatherings where members of law enforcement were there and members of our Chicago city government were there, unnamed aldermen, which I won't name, were there, and people from the community, they want to get up and let's gangueros again. And I'm like, wait, hold up, wait a minute, who are you talking about? That's your next door neighbor. That's your nephew, your son, your brother. That's who you're talking about. These are the people you're talking about locking up. Now, this is not no big secret in the state of Illinois that from 1979 to 90, they built, I don't know, like 100-some prisons, right? Like 127 prisons in the state of Illinois, something like that. And now they don't even got enough money to fund the prisons anymore now. They got to close some of them down. I go into the juvenile center and I talk to the youth. I said, if they really cared, things would be different. They don't really care. Our elected officials, the people that we put our faith in, our vote in, our money, trust our money with, they really don't care. So who's it up to really care? It's up for us, you, your family, people that are around you. You have to care about what you're doing and where you're going. I told them I'm tired of seeing you guys here. Same color faces, same look, same people. I run into, now it's my friends' sons are in there, and my friends' sons have sons. It's becoming it's been a generational thing, but now I can immediately see it, where it's been gone on. Here, you want this?
So there's some key things when we're talking about reaching youth and having transformative practices that change the way that we work with young people. BUILD is really intent upon making sure that we have programs that can reach young people and keep young people engaged over time. We work with young people even as young as 6 and 5 years old. My daughter's 3, and she participates in the programs. And some of the youth leaders are now even 27 and in the adult world, productive members of society. But we're able to reach young people in a developmentally appropriate way through our prevention, intervention, and our Building Futures program, which is the education, career, and youth leadership development component of BUILD. And what Meredith was really speaking about is crucial. We have to look at the assets that young people provide. And when we look at quote-unquote gangs, we have to also understand that those structures are not only organic structures in terms of what people may call a tribal sensibility, a normal human organization, but in studies that show retention and membership and positive youth outcomes, even gang affiliations can, now I'm not talking about the outcomes of violence or drugs, right? I'm talking about the actual kind of social emotional development and sense of belonging. It has proved to be where if young person stays in an environment that is stable, their outcomes are more likely to be positive. So for example, a gang has a very, can have a very structured environment, right? And if a nonprofit is to yearly be challenged by funding cycles and has a high turnover rate, if you actually compare them, a gang might be more sustainable in terms of its leadership development, not its outcome, right, than a nonprofit who has a high turnover rate and is unable to retain and keep staff. And that to me is alarming, that when it comes down to sense of belonging, it's the belonging that matters. And it's the positive youth development and looking at young people as assets, as contributors, that really makes the difference. And that's why it's so crucial when we talk about these issues of policy and funding, because those are the major challenges in being able to provide that sense of belonging, the sense of productivity, the sense of respect and dignity that young people deserve. When in fact we look at U.S. social programs right now, we look at the movements that young people like the Black Panther Party started that have fundamentally changed the way that we understand educational support services, such as the breakfast program for young people. Now people are starting to talk about an extended school day. How can programs such as BUILD provide out-of-school time supports, right? We understand that the hours between 3 and 6 p.m. are perhaps the most dangerous for young people, as unfortunately displayed over the media with regard to the recent waves of youth violence that have actually been the case over some time. And I guess part of our question in this dialogue is, what can we do about it, and how can we partner together? Right? Part of what we have experts within BUILD who are experts at working with young people, experts at reaching young people where they are and helping them transform their lives into a new path. One of the things we'd like to do is also to transform society, but we can't do that within just our organization. We need people in society to be willing to transform themselves and to transform the idea of young people as a pathology of violent, youth that are waiting to explode, to a population of young people who are under-resourced and underserved by our social and political will, right? We need to be able to allocate the resources in a continued way. We need to be able to make sure that we're supporting young people in the out-of-school time as strictly as we are focusing on the in-school day. A lot of youth workers, as reflected earlier, are making less than $32,000 a year with their hours being cut, furlough days. But the Chicago Teachers Union has a sizable amount of support for their teachers and could probably gain more support, right? But how come youth workers aren't respected as much as teachers are? Youth workers are experts in their own field. They're well aware of the developmental challenges that come with youth. They have expertise and credibility from the field, right? And so we have to think about, is society really, really, really dedicated to making sure that young people succeed? Or are we really more invested on scapegoating and criminalizing young people? And what?
Calling them gangs.
And calling them gangs, right? When we also look at recidivism rates, and you talk about finances. For example, in the city of New York, when we were working on the youth jails campaign, this is prior to my involvement with BUILD, but certainly part of our mission overall, right, is to create sustainable opportunities for young people to not be engaged in the criminal justice system. The city budget was willing to spend $120,000 per year per jail bed to house one youth, when a program like BUILD would cost about $10,000 a year per youth. So it's 10% of the cost, and our recidivism rate, or the rate of success for nonprofits to keep youth out of the system, is, I would say, 3 times better. So for example, in a juvenile justice situation, you'd have 88% recidivism rate, approximately. The chance of a young person going back into the juvenile justice system is 88%. Whereas with a young person, or approximately 80 to 88%, right? Whereas with a young person involved in a community program, has maybe a 30% chance of returning to a juvenile justice system. Also, we have to look at the specificity of Chicago. In the 90s, over 100,000 young people were pulled in through the anti-gang loitering laws, which identified a group of 2 or more young people standing on the corner as potential gang members and gave the Chicago Police Department full reign to have contact with young people. Maybe 7 of them were arrested for actual crimes, but that's 100,000 people who had contact with the juvenile justice system. The youth in Oakland this year voted down a curfew law that said that it would be unfair for young people to have contact with the Oakland Police Department. So instead of having a curfew, they said that there should perhaps be after-school programs and evening programs for young people within which they can thrive. But Chicago has a curfew for young people, which pretty much sets up an opportunity for a police officer to stop any youth at any time after the hours of 10:30, I believe, or 11 o'clock, depending on their perceived age. So when we look at the system and we look at our opportunities, we have to be very clear about where we can see opportunities, see the strengths, and increase them as much as possible. And that is the work that BUILD is really set out to do. We look at our work as transformative work, Positive youth development not only transforms young people, but it transforms their families and hopes to transform the community where young people can be respected and honored for the contributions they have historically provided to us. It is actually quite negligent historically to not respect the contributions that young people have given. The Young Lords, the Black Panther Party, the Brown Berets, the American Indian Movement, the Asian Americans, right? Everybody who's fighting for some sense of common justice was typically led by young people. And if we negate that historical truth, then we're walking blindly into a system that will incarcerate youth. Please.
Hello, my name is Paul Rutherford. I am the Vice Chairman of Cook County Crime Stoppers. I am also a volunteer at Union Impact Center as their Director of Youth Programs and Alternative Programs. Next to me is Rafael Yanez, who is the President and CEO of Union Impact Center. Gangs, I work mainly in the back of the yards area in Inglewood. Highly visible crimes. We just buried a kid last Friday, a 17-year-old kid from Tilden that was shot walking to go to a youth center outside of his area because...
You shot in the head?
Yes.
Yeah, my classmate is his teacher.
Yes. And it's sad. 17 years old sophomore. One, I question why was he a sophomore. That goes back to the educational system. Every school in the back of the yards are below state standards, and we have to question our educators and our Board of Ed regarding that. Second, let me just back up just 1 second. I am an alumnus from Roosevelt University, class of 03. I have a graduate degree from DePaul University, and I am a certified gang specialist from the National Institute of Gang Research by Dr. Knox. I grew up on 26th Street, a little village, what they known as K-Town back in the day. Jason may not remember me, but I was a little kid. Excuse me? No, you know what? Actually, Jason helped me keep on the straight track because his and his little group. I did. His little group deterred me from hanging out, and because of that, we moved to a different area. Back then, Cicero was a good place, but now it's just as worse as 26th Street. But anyway, I deal with these youth on a daily basis. Union Impact Center is a nonprofit organization. We do not receive any funding whatsoever from anyone. We hold our own. Everything we do for our youth, we have programs, up to 20 programs, Monday through Friday at Chavez, Daily, and Lara School. Not only for the youth, but also for the parents, because we understand that we have to educate the parents, because dealing with these gangbangers, it's a tradition for them. That's all the parents knows. 17-year-old kid shot in the head going to a community center outside his area because of gangs to do his homework. Sad. Cook County Crime Stoppers, I'm given at least 42 murder cases. The pictures that you see along this room is nothing new to me. I see it in a reality basis. All my years, I've investigated gangs and gang crimes, interrogated many gang members. And as these young ladies said, they want to be heard, even as on the street. They may be tough, and they may threaten you with a gun, they may show you what they have, but you pull them on a one-on-one basis and you talk to them sensibly, and they will tell you everything possible. What my organization does with Cook County Crime Stoppers is that we offer anonymity as well as a cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of the individual. Not the conviction, but the arrest. Cook County Crime Stoppers, myself and my partner, we are responsible of solving 10 homicides last year and 8 this year because of the anonymity. Because people are afraid to go to jail. They don't want to get involved. Now, 2004, there was an individual that was killed in Cicero, Illinois, 24 years old, single father of 2. And I tell this story no matter where I go. And I speak at a lot of schools. 4 gangbangers roll up to him. Of course, you know, what you be about, fool, what's up, what's up. And this gangbanger let loose 3 rounds into a car. Shot the guy in the side of the head and in the back. 17-year-old gangbanger did that. And this happened in Cicero, Illinois on December 18th, 2004. The community also needs to step up. Okay, if the community would have told about that guy who shot my baby brother, that he was the troublemaker of the neighborhood. Okay, police officers are not social workers. Police officers, their job is to enforce the laws. Okay, that's why you have all these mental health organizations, youth organizations, like such as BUILD, to deal with these type of problems. But officers, you know, everyone puts the blame on officers. I'm not a police officer. Okay, however, I don't believe that everyone should call the police when dealing with, if they can't deal with their son. If they broke the law, fine, let's lock them up. My mentality up until recently was lock up everyone. I don't care. You break the law, lock up everyone. I was at a meeting where I met Jason at the Latino Task Force at the Juvenile Center. And I went there because people kept on inviting me. They're like, you be good, you've seen it, you've done it. You know what these individuals are about because you lived in the community. You escaped from the community. You got your education, you know, you worked for a prominent law firm. Now, what, you know, you should be there. Now, I went there, leaving, it's like, there's nothing here because they're talking about restorative justice. Why? They're juveniles. You know, maybe they need that. They need to be locked up in the juvenile center to open their eyes. However, hold on one second, please. Then one of the women that was chairing the organization pulled me to the side and says, you know what? The guys that you deal with on with these murder cases, they're all adults, correct? I was like, yes, you are right. 9 out of 10 of them are adults. Now, these are guys, individuals, youth, who are going to you, okay? So if we can change their minds as youth and put them in programs such as BUILD and Union Impact Center, we can give them another alternative, hopefully changing their mind of what they're used to, what they're accustomed to, and what they see on a daily basis. I was in the back of the yards on 48th and Troop, and you see a little 5-year-old with a shag. If you guys don't know what a shag is, bald head, but hair below from the back with black and red. And I asked the mother, I was like, and she was in black and red too. That's the razas over there. I asked her, why is this 5-year-old in wearing what he's wearing with a gang haircut? He's cute. I was like, ma'am, I went to 25 funerals last year. Okay, all those funerals were under the age of 21. People who died because of violence. You think it's okay to teach them at a young age that razas, and this kid knew the gang signs, he knew which way to cross. I mean, it's really bad, and it's a tradition. We need to stop and break that tradition and not only deal with the youth, but educate these parents. A lot of these parents are immigrants. They don't know English. They don't know what's going on in their community. Now, I tell these parents when I go out to different schools, if your son is wearing black and blue 7 days a week, that should trigger a flag. And I teach them how to identify gangbangers. What colors are you wearing? What neighborhood you're in? What the signs and what all this other stuff.
Can you do me a favor? Stop calling them gangbangers and call them youth at risk. Because gangbangers sound like, I mean, I understand that's...
You know what,
that's like a traditional way of talking about it. But when you're referring to a youth or a young person, you're labeling them. Putting a label on them, calling them gangbangers. Gang-involved youth and youth at risk. But a gangbanger or a gang member, you're putting the label on him that he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his life.
And that's what I do with Union Impact Center. I take that label away from them, and I give them an alternative.
Use your tone in what you're saying.
No, that's the way I speak. I'm an attorney.
So thank you. I want to take a couple steps back and see if anybody has any questions for clarification. If people have, kind of need to maybe take a moment to say, like, do we understand the difference of these titles and labels and how they can impact young people. Are there any questions that people have who haven't yet had a chance to speak? Yes. Why don't we bring you the mic so that you can be here? You might need to move up a little bit because it almost fits you perfectly.
I think I've done a lot of reports on the CPS and the Chicago public school systems, and I think it's interesting when you view the state of Illinois and its budget. The state of Illinois is ranked 49th as far as the money it gives to its public schools. Only Arkansas is worse, and that's simply unacceptable. And when you view the Chicago funding, it seems to be that the least funded schools are the schools on the south side where minorities live. I think the way the system has been set up is for a few certain individuals to succeed and a few to fail. If the system's going to work, someone has to fail. And I think the only way we can do that is to change the leadership and change the structure of the system. And we need to get people energized and motivated towards that area, change the structure of the system altogether.
I have to respond to what you're saying. And I have to respond to what you're saying because, there was a lot of emphasis placed on gangbanger and colors and so on and so forth. I'm wearing light blue and blue, right? And I got gray socks. And yeah, it's hot, right? Okay. But if I walk down the street, do you think I would be identified as a gangbanger? No? Gang member? Any affiliation? Yeah, kind of thought. That's how, and in reference to what he's saying, it's very deceiving because I was in a gang. I'm an ex-gang member. And I have my master's degree in education. And I've learned a lot through that master's degree. And one of the biggest downfalls is the disparities within the educational system. We are taught there's 3 levels. The first level is that you become the CEO, executive, and that's for people who are taught how to critically think critically. Then you have the mid-level, management. Management is, you're kind of in between the staff member and the CEO, and you're taught how to share knowledge to the CEO, but how to tame the staff member. Then you have the bottom level, which is the staff member, right, who's taught how to be obedient as a staff member. And in our schools, the educational system, I'll probably get shot down for this, right? Our educational system is ridiculously guilty of that, on how we teach our young. And I share this because I don't know how many youth I have to sit down with, not even youth, 18-year-olds to 19-year-olds, 21-year-olds, that I have to sit down with and write an essay with so that they can get into college because they lack the skills. They come so unprepared to enter the college world. It is ridiculous. They don't even know what a support system is. They have no idea what student services is, admission, how to apply, so on and so forth. So what do? We create alternative schools. That's what we do for those that are not so willing, And then we label them as bad kids, kids who were in the educational system, had a shot at it, and went wrong. But let me tell you something. What I found really interesting, those alternative schools are very, very, connected to the youth. They are very connected to the youth. They have adopted a model. Paulo Freire? Okay. That you would not believe. And those youth come out with skills that I have never seen before, even in adults. So yes, the educational as well as the economic system also has a part to play in it, because we're taught how to be in a certain area in our lives and how to do certain things, right? And that's all we're taught.
I just want to just clarify something for Paul. I mean, I understand Paul going to the funerals. We talked about George Roque a little bit. It's a common coworker of ours named George Roque. He's a coordinator for the YMCA street intervention program. For years, George would tell me, Jason, you need to come work in this work, you need to do this. And I'm like, George, I don't want to do that. I'm tired of going to funerals. He used to go to every funeral, all the time, every funeral. I'm like, dude, how you doing it? And, you're going to young men's funerals, one after another. It gets kind of disheartening. You kind of get pessimistic because they're not getting it. They ain't changing. You may get sometimes you even get a little bit of resentment, but this, at the same time, you have to step back and look at yourself and so what take are you, where are you coming from and your reaction to it? And I didn't know that, Paul, about yourself and your brother and all that, but it's I can understand, sometimes you might have this resentment. These gang members, these gang bangers. You know what? They don't know. They really don't know what they're doing. They really don't. There's so much potential out there to take this negative energy and transform this energy into something positive. I don't promote anonymous phone calls, calling. I still have my remnants of that type of street code in me of snitching and all that type of stuff. But I can understand the need for somebody wanting to have the murder of their son solved and the murder of innocent victims, because a lot of these guys don't know how to shoot straight. They didn't get the chance because they got the conviction. They can't go to the military, so where do they learn how to shoot? At each other, right? So I can understand how people really feel about that. And it's not about, we're not saying, we must stop calling them this and all open arms and coddle them. They need to be coddled. They need to be loved and all that stuff. Nah, man, some of these guys got some really deep-seated issues of why they do the things they do. But the reason, getting past all that, I mentioned earlier the 3 to 5% that are holding our communities hostage. Why? What environmental, social conditions within his home, within the community, helped to create that guy that makes him want to do that? What's going on in this household? Because we're talking generations of dysfunctionalism, of family members, of alcoholism, of mental illness. In our communities, people of color, in our communities, we don't recognize these signs coming on for years. So it's already happened. And then the guy's psychotic. It goes on. So, it's small. Gangs is just the overall scapegoat that we're using for all these other issues that are underlying, that help create of what the gangs that we see today. And that's what we're going back to. We always say the base of it is education, which is true. It's true.
But not only educating them so that they can get a degree, educating them to gain knowledge. I work with the re-entry program. People that are coming out of prison are re-entered back into society. Someone was talking about that. Recidivism. How do we stop that? Why is it so important? Because that man that's in prison has a little kid that's going to follow in their footsteps, because children, right? Children, the first models that they see are who? Their parents, right? Okay, so how do we stop the, thank you. How do we stop the pipeline from happening? Why does someone who has already been convicted of a crime, has done their time, have to come out and do more time? Why? Why do they have to be convicted again and again and again and again? At what time did they pay the price to society? And what does that child learn from that? That society is just and fair? When he's running around or she's running around saying that they can't find a job because they have a felony conviction? What is that teaching our youth? And how do we adopt the attitude that, or try to get away from the attitude that once a convict, always a convict. Once a drug dealer, always a drug dealer. You know, at what point do we as society change that type of mentality? Because believe it or not, these people come out with a lot of skills. And I help create their resumes. And the first thing I ask them is, what do you have experience in? You know what they tell me? Well, you know, I've been in the joint, you know. I said, okay, so what skills did you pick up in the joint? Do you know how to make one-way signs? You know, because let me explain something to you. They are very intelligent people, extremely and highly skilled. And how do we take that and turn it to a positive? How do we, because they can be very good salespeople. Very good salespeople. Drug dealers are very good salespeople. I'm telling you. You know? And how do we use that to benefit us, society? People that we want them to be productive members of society. That was the whole reason why prison was invented. Rehabilitation. No more. What are we rehabilitating? You know, they come out here, they already have a rap sheet. Even the kids, the education that the kids have, and this is the reality. I have sat in, you know, our little group meetings and stuff with the young ladies, and you know what they tell me? That they can do stuff because they can get away with it. Because it's not on their rap sheet. Because at 21 years old, it's all going to be gone. That's a lie. And that's the biggest lie that we tell our children. You know, that it's okay because you're young. No, it's not okay. And that's the reason why we have organizations like Bill, to let you know that it's not okay. And there is an alternative. And the professor wants to speak.
As an economist, I've always heard the principle that violence is bad for business. And it used to be a motto of the old-fashioned organized crime groups. They would try to hold down the violence because they thought it was bad for business. So do you think there's any possibility of the different gang organizations having a meeting and forming a commission and trying to hold down the violence? If yeah, that's called RICO Act. Well, you're saying that it's illegal to do, but do you think there should be some reconsideration of law enforcement trying to get the gangs together to have some sort of overall regular meetings, not necessarily to coordinate drug sales, but to keep down the violence, to settle disputes in a less violent way?
That was ceasefire's strategy, was to encourage the stopping of the violence and so on, but it wasn't focused on the business aspect of gang violence and gang involvement. Law enforcement organizing something of that thing is not going to happen because that's not what law enforcement is about. You're talking about some type of, I mean, that's not going to happen. What you're putting putting out there, like them coming together and having like an overall rule that let's stop this so business can continue. That meeting or something of that nature will never really ever happen. Guys doing it amongst themselves, that's a possibility. Ceasefire had different methods in which they had an individual that was known as a violence interrupter, and they received a lot of criticism because they hired ex-offenders and former gang members and guys that were perhaps looked at as being in position in that type of gang life and gangs. They had rank, and they used them as intermediaries to stop the violence. They were criticized, saying, well, these guys are still perpetuating their own agenda, while in the guise of being street intervention workers and ceasefire workers type thing. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. What I do know is that the guys that I've met that have a real heart for working in the field, that really want to see a difference, that are just tired, because a lot of us are just tired of seeing funerals and going to funerals and seeing guys going to jail and seeing guys in wheelchairs that have sincerity for the work. Them individually making them type of changes, that can happen. But an overall big thing, that stopped when the FBI came and swooped everybody's leadership out. There's been consistent, which that's their job. You know, the FBI, that's their job. Whether it's a premeditated conspiracy design plan to eliminate the leadership of these gangs so the gangs run rampant and cause all this violence and havoc in the city or not, I can't say that because I don't have the proof to say that. But whether they designed to knock down all the buildings and spread all these different organizations across the city of Chicago, there's four corner hustlers and stones all over the city now. Because when they knocked down them buildings, they put them all over the whole city. Now them guys, one guy was a little soldier in the building. Now he was all stuck up in the building, no room to move. Now he got a whole neighborhood to run because they've been moved them, and with his cousins and whoever else they've been moved there, and they recruited everybody around them. How do you stop that? Nobody really thought about had foresight to think that this might happen. So what you're saying, as far as them the gangs coming to a consensus to eliminate the violence, to have some type of overall thing, or like the mafia has, or which doesn't really work out because they all told on each other, right? And the mob, so they're not even really power in the city how they used to be. I mean, this is I work in the streets every day. I've met people like you're talking about, are connected people and stuff like that. And they're not that impressive to me, but I don't see that happening. What I see happening is people after. I'm a believer in tragedy. It takes somebody to go through a tragic experience to make them want to change. You get kids that after they've been in the juvenile system, once they've reached a certain age, they become hardened by the system. So at that point in time, it's going to take them to experience a tragedy to make them want to change. Either a tragedy to themselves, their family, immediately in front of them. Other than that, they're going to have to learn the hard way. And that's the reality. And I try to prevent guys from learning the hard way. You don't have to go to prison to learn. Learn from these mistakes, right? Because they think, oh, a guy comes out of prison, he knows all this stuff. And, nah, you went to prison because you got caught. You weren't slick enough, right? You got busted. All right, so what did you do when you were there? You learned. I learned. That's what I did. I did that. I rehabilitated myself. I sought out Roosevelt University to go to school. You know, I came home, continued, went to school. I sought that out because I changed myself in there. Because I didn't see any type of future of staying in there. But others are not as fortunate or didn't have that type of, not everybody comes out as nice as me. You got guys that are, believe that, I'm not that nice. But believe there are guys that are coming out that been sitting there because they eliminated all the education systems out of the Department of Corrections. You got guys that all they're sitting around doing is locked up in the room, lifting weights. If they know, some places they don't even got weights to lift. You know, in maximum security prisons, they have basic ABE, which is adult basic education, and GED programs. If the guy is lucky enough to make it out of the max and goes to a high max or a medium max, which are converted once medium prisons that are now have all double fences and double razor wires, so they call them high mediums or medium maxes, he might be able to go and get some GED classes on a regular school, right? Only until they hit a minimum prison where they might have the experience where they can go to a associate's degree level college now. Before, we used to be able to go to, I started my college in Lewis University in Stateville Correctional Center, and I went to Roosevelt at East Moline and got my bachelor's degree while I was there, you know, my associates and my bachelor's. So I mean, that was I was scared they were cutting out the schools. I was running from classroom to classroom, leaving one classroom early to run to another classroom to be there late, 10 minutes late, so I could get the college credits they were putting in there, because this was essential for my survival of coming home. And I thought, okay, the bachelor's degree, I got this, I'm home now. Nah, I needed more because I had the X on my back. It was glowing. I needed more, so I went and got my master's degree. And if I didn't go to school when I first came out, where Meredith was mentioning reentry, which I do in-kind services, means I do it for free. I do reentry work with some individuals. There's guys that are coming home that don't have that benefit of being able to educate themselves while they were there. It's really important. You guys are students. You are the vanguard. I don't know how you feel about these personally, because a lot of you guys ain't said nothing. But it's really important that you go back to wherever neighborhood you come from, wherever community you come from, find a way to give back, because some little brother out there or little sister out there needs your inspiration. You know, seriously, you get a chance to mentor some guy or anybody that you see is going sound down, that's really important. You need to do that, because then they don't end up in those other people's hands and they come out. You got guys that are coming, they have severe psychological issues, traumatizing psychological. We got places here in America, we got places where they bury people alive that are structurally built off of research they did in Marion Prison on methods of keeping people under control in confined environments. And they structurally built supermax prisons to break their will and spirit. They are built structurally that way. Total isolation. A human being cannot be without other human contact or without feeling the earth and the sun on their face. You will wither and die just like a plant if you don't have that. And they have them guys, human beings, whether they're labeled as gang leaders or terrorists or whatever you want to call them, this is the United States of America, are buried in a hole someplace. Don't get no daylight. This is what they do to them. This is what our youth that get pegged as leaders, because I was pegged as a leader, and what happens is once they peg you as a leader, they continue to arrest you. It's like a unwritten police officer's modus operandi. They peg somebody, this kid's going to be a leader, so let's get rid of him. So they arrest you. I got arrested 3 times in one day for walking down the street. You know? They arrest you, they arrest you, they arrest you, they arrest you. You mess up and do something really bad. The judge got a whole thing, a list. This guy was arrested 25 times for curfew and it's all BS arrests. But the one bad thing that I really did, man, he's a bad kid. Boom, probation. Now you're on probation. They keep arresting you, violate probation. Looks worse and worse. So they built up this whole record on you to find a reason to send you away. That's how they do it. They pick, so the guys that could be leaders, that could be transformed into something else, are on a one-way street to prison. So now they're in prison. Now the prison system, what it used to, how it was before, is not how it is now. It's total. It's not about rehabilitation. It's about revenge and retribution. So that they're in there and there's no forms of education and there are movement or anything. So what are you expecting to come out?
Yeah. So I just wanted to, this is a call to action. Us being here is not simply just to share stories and to also share perspectives and philosophical basis, but this is really a call to action to everybody sitting in this room, so that we can understand that as a community we are all responsible for the situations that happen in whatever neighborhood across the city of Chicago. If we do not stand up for young people and stand up with them and allow them to stand up for themselves, instead of continuing to suppress their voice, right, and being able to really provide them opportunities where they can thrive, then we will have to hold ourselves responsible for the outcomes that young people present to us, because they are simply learning from our society, right? And so this is a call, let this be a call to action to each and every one of us to get engaged and involved. Build welcomes you to become a volunteer. We need young people to be tutors. We need to tutor the young people who are struggling academically. If you want to host us for a college tour or provide academic credit for young people who are in high school who want to gain college degrees quicker than 4 years and who are really dedicated to their own success, we call you to action to stand up with us in the face of all these barriers to success, and let's work together so that we can really overcome these challenges, so that young people can thrive, and when we're old and gray, we will be supported. Because we know that the young people are taking responsibility in their communities, and we need to be able to be supported as we become older as well. It is our own self-interest to be in the interest of young people, not for any other reason, right? But for selfish reasons. Let's stand up together and do that in unity.
I wanted to respond to your question. And I totally believe it has happened. I have done it. That we all can come together to tame the violence. But I think the question is, how long? Because it could be tamed, but for a brief moment of time. And then it just regenerates again. So, again, in response to your question, yes, that's a possibility. It has happened. It happens all over Chicago, but for a brief period of time. I think it's more important of the maintenance than the actual emphasis.
I want to thank you all for coming here, and we can stay afterwards and continue the discussion, but the program is officially over now. And so I want to thank Nancy with the Mansfield Institute for Social Justice and Transformation. Do you want to say any last words? No. Oh, okay, and thanks for all the visitors here, and thanks for CAN TV. Okay. See you.